Should a corporation have the same rights as an American voter? You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Here are the facts. At first glance, the concept of a person seems simple. A person could be any individual. While some people have different rights, a citizen of a country enjoys benefits that a visitor might not. Until artificial intelligence emerges, a person is just that, a single human being. But there's a recent wrinkle to this debate, and it doesn't involve soulless robots, online hive minds, or other works of science fiction. The question we're debating now is this: could a corporation legally be considered a person? Here's where it gets crazy. Yes, at least there's a degree of equivalency. In the United States, this notion is often called corporate personhood. It's the idea that corporations have certain legal abilities typically ascribed to humans. This is an old idea. In the US, corporations can own property, hire and fire employees, and so on as a separate entity from the shareholders. So the recent concerns over corporate personhood are less about the idea itself and more about the degree of personhood. How much of a person is a corporation? Does it have a right to free speech? This issue came to a head during a Supreme Court case called Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. In 2008, a nonprofit group called Citizens United bankrolled a media piece on Hillary Clinton. The court ruled by a 5-4 majority that corporations, nonprofits, and unions could spend as much money as they wish advocating for or against a candidate. To supporters, this is a fair defense of free speech, as corporations represent the interest of their shareholders. Should shareholders lose their rights when they own corporations in the same way that they lose some personal liability for a corporation's actions? To opponents, this ruling opens the door for massive corruption. Does it, as the opponents say, make a corporation a person? Not entirely. There are still certain things a corporation can't do, but there's a growing movement to overturn this ruling. At the time of this recording, April 2013, the Citizens United case still stands, but it remains controversial. So controversial, in fact, that one of the draft dissenting opinions remains unpublished today. What did Justice Soter have to say about this ruling? For now, that's something the court doesn't want you to know.
Imperial steel is a part of our daily living. It is a member of our society. Yet it is not simply this property, nor is it a human being or a group of human beings. It is Imperial Steel Company Incorporated, with stock owned by people in widely scattered places.
When trying to lose weight, which is most important, diet or exercise? This is what a survey found recently. The vast majority of those trying to lose or maintain weight believe that both monitoring food and beverage consumption and physical activity are equally important in weight management and weight loss. Most people go with equally important, then exercise, and then diet, and most people are wrong. Identified as one of the most common misconceptions about obesity in this recent review, the confusion about the leverage of exercise on body weight. Unfortunately, the energy balance equation, calories in have to equal calories out, suggests that energy intake and energy expenditure occupy equivalent roles in determining energy balance, when in fact, the factors governing energy intakes influence the energy balance far more powerfully than the factors determining resting energy expenditures. What we put in our mouths is most important. For example, to walk off the calories found in a single pat of butter, you'd have to add an extra 700 yards to your stroll that evening. A quarter-mile jog for each sardine we put in our mouth, and that's just the edible part. And those who choose to eat 2 chicken legs better get out on their own 2 legs and run an extra 3 miles that day to outrun weight gain. And that's for steamed chicken, skin removed. For most of the last century, a prevailing theory within the field of nutrition was that by eating acid-forming foods, such as meat, we were in essence at risk of peeing our bones down the toilet. And no wonder. Experiments dating back to 1920 showed over and over that if you add meat to the diet, you get a big spike in the amount of calcium being lost in the urine. And so this made total sense. We had known since 1912 that meat was acid-forming within the body, and how do you buffer acid? What are in antacid pills like Tums? Calcium. Meat and eggs have a lot of sulfur-containing amino acids, 2 to 5 times more than grains and beans, that are metabolized into sulfuric acid, which the body buffers with calcium. That's why the antacids like Tums are made out of calcium. Calcium can buffer acid. And where is calcium stored in the body? The skeleton. So the thinking was that every time we ate a steak, our body would pull calcium from our bones bit by bit, and over time this could lead to osteoporosis. Based on 26 such studies, every 40 grams of protein we add to our daily diet, we pee out an extra 50 milligrams of calcium. And look, we only have about 2 pounds of calcium in our skeleton, so the loss of 50 a day would mean losing close to 2% of our bone calcium every year. And so by the end of the 20th century, there was little doubt that acid-forming diets would dissolve our bones away. But if you actually look at all the studies done on protein intake and bone health, that's not what you find. So where's the flaw in our logic? Right? Meat leads to acid, which leads to calcium loss, which leads to bone loss, right? Well, it's uncontroversial that protein results in greater calcium excretion, but we've just been assuming it's coming from the bone. I mean, where else could the extra calcium dumped in our urine be coming from but from our bones? This is the study that appeared to solve the mystery. An intrepid group of researchers tried feeding a bunch of volunteers radioactive calcium, and then putting them on a high-protein diet. What happens when you put people on a high-protein diet? The amount of calcium in their urine shoots up, and indeed that's just what happened. But here's the big question. Was that extra calcium in their urine radioactive or not? And to everyone's surprise, it was radioactive, meaning that the excess calcium in the urine was coming from their diet. Remember, they're feeding them radioactive calcium. So the excess calcium in their urine wasn't coming from their bones, but from what they were eating. What seemed to be happening is that the excess protein consumption boosted calcium absorption from down around 19% up to 26%. So all of a sudden there was all this extra calcium in the blood, so presumably the kidneys are like, whoa, what are we going to do with it all? So they dump it in the urine. 90% of the extra calcium in the urine after eating a steak doesn't appear to be coming from our bones, but from our diet. We're not sure why protein boosts calcium absorption. Maybe the protein increases the solubility of calcium by stimulating stomach acid production. Whatever the reason, yes, more calcium lost, but more calcium gained, such that in the end, most of that extra calcium is accounted for. So in effect, more calcium is lost in the urine stream, but may be compensated by less loss of calcium through the fecal stream. This was repeated with even more extreme diets, an acid-forming 5 burgers a day worth of animal protein diet that limited fruit and vegetables, versus an alkaline diet emphasizing fruits and vegetables. More calcium in the urine on burgers, but significantly greater calcium absorption, such that at the end it was pretty much a wash. Other studies have also since supported this interpretation. Here's an ingenious one. Feed people a high animal protein diet, but with an alkali salt to neutralize the acid. Now, the old thinking would predict that there would be no calcium loss since there was no excess acid to buffer. But no, even though the acid load was neutralized, there was still the excess urinary calcium, consistent with the radioactive isotope study, challenging this long-standing dogma that animal protein consumption results in an acidosis that promotes the excess excretion of calcium. So if our body isn't buffering the acid formed from our diet with our bones, how is it neutralizing the acid? Maybe with our muscles. Alkaline diets may protect our muscle mass, all covered in my next video, entitled Testing Your Diet with Pea and Purple Cabbage. Stay tuned.